Good evening, you are watching the Ukraine on Fire project. My name is Raul. When I was preparing the previous story, I knew that many Orthodox Ukrainians would watch the episode about the Pope. Just in case. Away from sin. But you know what? On February 23, 2022, most Ukrainians did not know the name of the Russian defense minister. They were out of politics. Away from sin. Now Ukrainians know their faces, and many can easily distinguish between a cruise missile and a rocket by the sound. In martial arts, this is called awareness, when you are aware of yourself here and now, and not sitting in prostration. You do not fuss, but react to what is happening around you. Because if it doesn't, the rocket will land right in the middle of your face. Rocket is a very good teacher, its only drawback is a high percentage of stupid students dying. I mean, knowledge is no less important than faith. And faith must be chosen independently, and not rely on parents. But who am I to forbid people to get pancreatitis after fasting, not to insure cars and not to wear seat belts, because they have already been blessed, dedicated and pasted icons on the windshield? Without knowledge, faith is difficult to distinguish from obscurantism. Here is a perfect example of Russian propaganda.
The base of the Azov battalion in the vicinity of Mariupol. There are several buildings on a vast territory behind a high fence. There were barracks, workshops, technical buildings and headquarters. A statue of a pagan deity immediately catches your eye, next to a prayer stone. It still has offerings. We go inside the building and in one of the rooms we find the same idol. Experts explain what is here and why.
The Azov fighters had their own religion. In order to separate them from society, Azov had its own faith. It is created on a mixture of Scandinavian gods and beliefs. In Azov, a cult of death was adopted. One of the gods was Marana, the goddess of death. They were ready to die for their idea, not necessarily for their homeland, but for this idea. For their military order, fanatics. This made them exceptional. They felt like gods.
The pseudo-journalist tells about a statue of a pagan deity and a prayer stone on which offerings remained. There is no stone on the screen and no offerings. Why? After all, a gnawed baby could become evidence of the atrocities of Azov for a court in The Hague. So why don't they show us anything? Nothing to show? Then let's continue. Two connoisseurs of ancient religions are examining some kind of wooden craft. But we are shown it from afar. There's no close-up. Why? Negligence?
Coincidence? I don't think.
Let's go back to the wooden idol at the entrance. Why does the goddess look so strange? On the internet you can find her image. This is a pretty woman. She is not the goddess of death in the understanding of Indian mythology with her dark goddess Kali. Morana is more associated with agrarian rites of death and the resurrection of nature. The neo-pagans began to call Morana the goddess of death, but even now they cannot distinguish the phallus from the finger. And yet, only the Czechs called the goddess Morana, and the Slavs said Marina. What do we end up with? A wooden post with a carved man is not a goddess of death. The prayer stone and offerings were not shown. The wooden chock in the military's hand can be anything from a whistle to a dildo. I spent 10 minutes on fact-checking. I suggest watching the video again to learn how to distinguish Russian propaganda from the truth. By the way, the goddess Kali is also not the goddess of death. She is a many-sided goddess who leads life from the moment of conception until death. However, I'm not going to refute the Russian propagandists. I'm interested in something else. Can an adult worship the goddess of death? Can he build a temple to her on his own land and offer sacrifices in the form of cereals or animal meat? Can he preach his religion if it does not conflict with the criminal and administrative code, and also does not violate generally accepted morality? The Constitution of the Russian Federation states that he can. The same is written in the Constitution of Ukraine. Freedom of religion is everywhere postulated. Therefore, I cannot understand at all what the Azov regiment was accused of now. And who are the accusers? The vanguard of the Orthodox army? Crusaders? Maybe Russia, along with demilitarization, declared a religious war on us? Given that Buddhists, Muslims, Jews, Orthodox Putinists, and just atheists serve in the Russian army? And after that, some of you accuse me of fantasizing a lot with the Pope. Seriously? Before we continue, I would like to remind you that on my channel I share my thoughts with people who are interested in these thoughts. For those who are left, I continue. There is a war for survival in Ukraine. An enemy has come to our house who kills children, rapes women, and shoots bound people in the back of the head. These are not liberators, these are invaders, murderers, and marauders. And if the Azov regiment, which is dying heroically in the ruins of Mariupol, is now praying not to Jesus, but to the goddess Kali, Odin, Vels, and even Chulhu, I don't mind. It doesn't matter to me who the warrior hopes for on the threshold of eternity when he says, "And passing through the valley of the shadow of death, let me not fear evil, because you are with me." Do you know why it doesn't matter? Because even Chulhu against the backdrop of Putin's darkness is a knight in shining armor. Proven by Mariupol. I think that if you die for someone, then you die for life, not worshipping death. The Azov regiment and Ukrainian Marines are dying for each of us. But you know, the Russian Federation is not only afraid of Azov, it is even afraid of cartoons in the second month of the war. The other day, the PR agency of the Russian army had trouble with the letter Z. This time, the illustrious Minister of Defense was not let down by the generals, but by a children's cartoon in which children on the Neptune submarine stumbled upon a Nazi destroyer. It was very easy to determine.
All clear, this is a Nazi destroyer. How do I know? Nazi destroyers were designated with the letter Z.
Of course, the attempts of the Russian authorities to remove the cartoon from YouTube led to the fact that the whole world watched it. So the Russian Federation has its own Simpsons that predict the future. This is SOYUZMULTFILM.
Хотя уже можно сокращать до Союз. Фильмов скоро тоже не будет. Останется одно сплошное телевидение.
I don't want to give the letter Z to Russian troops or Russia. Because I drive a Nissan 350Z and this is a real disaster for me, because now I have to seal all these logos. But the car is good and it's not Nissan's fault that the Russians chose this letter to mark the killers in Ukraine. There is such a term, the Russian internet. This is not about language, this is about an alternative reality built on fakes. If you suddenly decide to find out the truth about the war in Yugoslavia, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, or, God forbid, in Ukraine, you will be in for a lot of surprises. And any click on the link will lead you to more and more fakes. The depth of false analytics is decades. Most of the statements will be unfounded without a little bit of evidence. If you do not speak foreign languages, you are finished. You will live in the matrix created by Vladimir Putin. How it works? An excellent case is the cruiser Moscow. What can we learn from the Russian internet? On the night of the 13th to the 14th of April, 2022, the ship was severely damaged by fire and explosion. That is, there was a fire on the ship. Then the Russian Ministry of Defense reported that while being towed to Sevastopol, the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet, Moskva, lost its stability and sank in a storm. A little later, that the whole team was saved. In some places you can see references to the fact that, according to the Ukrainian authorities, the ship was sunk by 2 Neptune anti-ship missiles. But further clicks on the links of the Russian internet will convince the reader that Neptune has never been put into production and, in principle, is extremely inefficient and outdated.
Убедят зрителя и читателя, что Нептун никогда не был запущен в серию и, в принципе, крайне неэффективный и устаревший.
Thus, in 10 years, an ordinary Russian will definitely remember that the cruiser Moskva sank while being towed due to a fire and explosion that occurred under unclear circumstances. It's good that bad luck and bad weather didn't affect the team that survived the fire, explosion, storm, flood. And we will build a new ship, and we will call it the Fireproof Cruiser. But this, as you already understood, is my author's version. What's in reality? At the moment, the whole world knows that 2 missiles flew into the port side of the cruiser. Advanced weapons and 500 crew members could not prevent this. Shit happens. As a result of a missile attack on a cruiser, part of the ammunition detonates.
Only brains on the walls.
Then the fire starts. As can be seen from the photographs, there was no storm at sea. No one is towing the ship, it just burns out and slowly sinks to the bottom. What about crew? It is obvious that there are heavy losses, in addition, not only contract soldiers, but also conscripts served on the cruiser. According to the insider publication, there is confirmed information on 4 conscripts who served on the Moscow. The parents of these sailors are now trying to get at least some information from the Department of Defense. One of the mothers of the missing conscript said that she was in the hospital, where there are 200 crew members, burnt, with torn-off arms and legs. She did not find her son there. What about the rest of the team? 300 people disappeared somewhere. Who knows? Especially interesting is the situation with the missing. Missing in the middle of the sea on a burning cruiser that sank. And is anyone looking for these sailors, or vice versa? Are the Russians covering up the traces of the deaths of hundreds of Russian citizens? I think that the terrible truth about the dead will be told in parts, seasoned with hefty portions of lies. And this is great for Ukraine, because every new lie gives rise to Russian distrust of Putin and his policies. Silence of the facts gives rise to rumors that are worse than the most terrible truth. Yes, I know that the truth is the first to die in a war, but now I am also addressing the Ukrainian leaders. There is a white lie, and there is Mariupol. If the rescue operation is impossible, if the de-blockade is impossible, tell the truth. We know who is killing the city, its inhabitants and defenders. As long as the people believe in the army and their government, the country is invincible. As U.S. Marine Corps General James Mad Dog Mattis said, you must not let any of your people escape the hard facts. It's very bad if they start living in a fantasy world. For example, Newspeak has already appeared in Russia. Here is how the head of the Central Bank of the Russian Federation, Elvira Nabialina, describes the financial crisis and the impending default. The period when the economy can live off reserves is finite. And already in the second and third quarters, we will enter a period of structural transformation and the search for new business models. Translated from Hayu Rukai, this means, money for pensioners and state employees has run out, the economy is falling apart, and the search for new business models can be translated as try to learn the skills of collecting nuts, edible roots and healing herbs. This is what lies lead to. You start with an innocent "she drowned," you end with Newspeak like, there was a bang, and the economy went into a gaseous state.
Закончишь новоязом типа произошел хлопок и экономика перешла в газообразное состояние.
And instead of interception by the SBU, today we have news from Viktor Medvedchuk.
Viktor Medvedchuk, would like to address President of the Russian Federation Vladimir Putin and President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky, with a request to exchange me by the Ukrainian side for the defenders of Mariupol and residents. Those who are there and do not have the possibility of a safe exit through humanitarian corridors.
The appearance of this video is an indirect confirmation that the defense of Mariupol is coming to an end along with the city. It is almost completely destroyed, and the ruins have become a symbol of what the arrival of the Russian world in Ukraine means. And here a very interesting moment awaits us, which will shed light on the character and psychology of Vladimir Putin. He is often compared to Stalin, who got Russia with a plow and left it with a nuclear bomb. And it is known for certain about Stalin that when his son Yakov was captured, the Germans offered to exchange him for a German general. Stalin replied, "I do not exchange privates for generals." Whether Putin will answer that he does not change his godfather for the Azov regiment is an intrigue. It will also shed light on whether Putin is ready to press the red button. Does he have principles, or is he an ordinary kleptocrat who only thinks about wealth and power for the sake of power? And is the Azov regiment ready for such an exchange? Of course, I am in favor of an exchange. Our soldiers have done the impossible, the city has been destroyed, the remnants of the inhabitants are on the brink of a humanitarian catastrophe. If we can exchange them all for Viktor Medvedchuk's worthless life, that's great. But the moment when this story is being recorded, there is no answer from Putin. But there is an exclusive video of Oksana Marchenko's wife appealing to higher authorities, without waiting for the decision of Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin.
Dear Emperor Palpatine, I am Oksana Marchenko, the wife of opposition leader Viktor Medvedchuk, People's Deputy of Ukraine, and I appeal to you for help. On April 12, my husband was illegally detained.
And now I would like to thank everyone who supports our project financially. I see many familiar names and surnames next to the amount you transfer. We already have 25 sponsors on YouTube, and there were 26, but the Pope unsubscribed. I also often see your reposts and am very attentive to comments and advice. Therefore, today I am answering some important questions for you and for me.
Поэтому сегодня отвечаю на некоторые важные для вас и для меня вопросы.
They wrote me an email. Raul, I'm ready to give you money. Please make a story in Ukrainian. It's not even offensive, it's just funny. Why is our project published in Russian? For the same reason that our troops use the Kalashnikov assault rifle. It's not the best weapon in the world, but we have it and it works here and now. As for me, I am fluent in Ukrainian and have been producing Ukrainian language content for Ukrainian television for 20 years. So I don't need to be taught to love the motherland, and especially how to deal with the fight against Russian propaganda and promote Ukrainian narratives. And there is no need to correct me and tell me that Ukraine on Fire is spelled differently. If you studied your native history and literature, you would know that Ukraine on Fire is the title of an old Ukrainian film.
Бо якби ви вчили рідну історію та літературу, то знали б, що це назва кіноповісті Олександра Довженка, і я повністю зберіг авторську назву.
As the statistics showed, only on YouTube, the project Ukraine on Fire has already been watched by 165,000 people from Russia. And they continue to watch news from us, from Ukraine. We are watched by Kazakhstan, Georgia, Belarus, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan. On Facebook, our project was viewed by 14,600,000 users during the 44 days of the war. Almost 3 million of them are Russia. Then comes Kazakhstan. Do you really think that right now we should cut off Russians' access to Ukrainian news and analytics? Me not. I think we can return to the conversation about the language after our victory, if we suddenly need to continue the project. Let me also remind you that we are dubbing the releases in Spanish and English. And it has already worked in Spanish. There is a big increase in views and a heated discussion of each story. I know exactly what we are doing and why. For Russian viewers who ask why I'm not at the front, I'll tell you a little about myself. My military specialty is social and psychological service. I graduated from the military department of the Institute of Journalism, and right now I am at war, only my task is not to kill Russians, but to save them. With the truth about this shameful war. And the more Russians agree to find out the truth and give up the war, the less our soldiers on the front line will have to kill them. This is my job. You watch the Ukraine on Fire project. Remember that Russia will lose. Glory to Ukraine.
And now I will show you where the attack on Belarus was being prepared from.
Тебе не интересно, не мешай.